3 years ago in my old East Village apartment, I specifically remember filming the Saturn in Aquarius video before anything in my life blew up. So that video in particular is just meaningful because it was right before everything really happened for me. It's pretty crazy that now, 3 years later, we're filming Saturn in Pisces, and this is a transit that is a very different energy. It's a big shift from Saturn in Aquarius, but starting in March 2023, Saturn will be in Aquarius for 3 years. Starts March 7th, 2023, goes until about February 13th, 2026, with some retrogrades in there dabbling into Aries. This means there's a new set of boundaries, challenges, and disputes that the world will be experiencing. In this video, I'm going to explain what this Saturn in Pisces transit means for the world with specific predictions for events, and also your sign at the end of this. If you want even more detail on what's happening for your sign specifically for 2023, I make individual videos for each sign for the year ahead, so make sure to catch your sign's 2023 forecast on my channel as well. Hi, I'm Maren. If you're new here, I'm using the tropical zodiac with Western astrological techniques. And if you would like any of my exclusive content like daily horoscopes or courses, those are all linked down below, as well as my private one-on-one readings. So Saturn represents restrictions, boundaries, and limits. I have a full video on the planets and the signs linked below, so if you're new to what Saturn or Pisces mean, those will be below. But Saturn is a planet of maturity, and it's a very get your shit together energy. It is known as the greater malefic, because if there's a planet that indicates hardship, it's going to be Saturn. And that does not make it bad. Saturn's my favorite planet, but it's definitely an acquired taste. When Saturn is transiting through a sign, it represents collectively where we are facing blockages, restrictions, or limitations in a general theme. So when Saturn was in Aquarius for the past few years, which is a fixed air sign concerned with social collectives and technological innovation, we had lockdowns like social distancing, lots of fighting, and lots of regulations being enforced around social media and big tech. So literally like Saturn boundary in a sign about social connection, that's what happened. Saturn in Pisces, I expect more belief-based restrictions. So Pisces is the sign then, and if a planet is an actor, then the sign is the role that it's playing. Planets are the actual things doing the describing, signs are the archetype that adds texture. So Pisces represents this archetype in the world, which is a mutable water sign. Mutable signs are adaptable, and they show the transition or flexibility between things. And water signs do deal with emotional, heartfelt, creative matters. Signs do not directly represent things in the world, as I explained in my Pluto and Aquarius video, which will be coming out around the same time, so make sure to catch that if you haven't. Signs do not equate to events in the world, but a planet in a sign can result in a certain description that we can expect in the world. So Pisces, being a mutable water sign, is the most creative, most abstract of them all. If there's an ooey gooey like emotional sign, it's going to be Pisces. And in the world, we can then extrapolate Saturn and Pisces to deal with restrictions on the transfer of interconnectedness between things. It's emotional conviction, it is faith, belief, bodily spread. And the main thing I'm expecting with Saturn and Pisces is policing around beliefs and faith. What are you allowed to believe? What are you allowed to practice? What religions are harmful? What ideologies are harmful? Are you infringing on my body? Am I infringing on your body? Do I have a right to? What even limits on drugs do we need to reevaluate? So now I'm going to run through the last 2 times that Saturn was in Pisces and describe the events that happened then, so we can have a baseline for what to predict now. The most recent time was in the 90s, so there was 93 to 94-ish and 94 to 96-ish. If you want exact dates, I will leave them down below, but just for sake of concision, 93, 94, and then 94, 96. And I'm gonna run through just hallmark events. I did literally pick these because they were good representations, but there were other events as well. So in the US in 93, there was a Waco siege on the compound belonging to the religious group Branch Davidians by American and Texas federal state law. So going in on belief systems, as well as there was the World Trade Center bombing by Islamic fundamentalists. So I did see an increase in religious terrorism during both of these transits on many different sides and aisles. I'm not singling out one religion here. In 1994, Netscape was launched as the first successful web browser, which does feel very much like there's a structure to then look at dreams and eye-opening things. Saturn and Pisces. South Africa holds its first multiracial elections, which has been important, either limitations or the opening of limitations around race in particular during these transits. And there was a lot of space travel. In 1995, Stephen Fawcett becomes the first person to make a solo flight across the Pacific Ocean in a hot air balloon. That felt very much Saturn Pisces. Like, let me put in a structure to go around the world. There was a series of very important European peace agreements all throughout 95, and Megan's Law came about in the US, which is actually titled the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, but informally called Megan's Law. It helps parents make aware of the presence of convicted sex offenders in their neighborhood. So you get to know if there were sex offenders, very Saturn and Pisces. Like, you get to know if there was something going on. In 1966, the UN adopts the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, so limit on the spread of things. Prince Charles and Diana get divorced. There were several major heartbreak, divorce things going on with these transits, and there was a lot of sinking and maritime warfare issues. And then the time before that was in the 60s. So exact dates will be below. In 1964, on April 20th, President Lyndon Johnson and Soviet Premier Khrushchev in Moscow announced plans to cut back production of materials for making nuclear weapons. So even in the time before this, there was a restriction on nuclear things. That is one of my main predictions, just TLDR, is also restrictions on nuclear. On June 12th, Nelson Mandela and others were sentenced to life in prison in South Africa. There was a ton of fighting around the Vietnam War. That's the major dispute going on this time. Walt Disney's Mary Poppins becomes Disney's most money-making film ever and wins 5 Academy Awards, which feels very Saturn and Pisces because it's structure and seriousness around a dream and animation. There was a Christmas flood in 1964 that was huge, so very Saturn and Pisces. And the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was signed into law by President Johnson this year, as well as a War on Poverty campaign was begun. In 1965, there was a huge civil rights focus with Martin Luther King, with Malcolm X. Martin Luther King led a major march in Alabama from Selma to Montgomery. Malcolm X was shot in New York. Vietnam War press continue. And a kind of more lighthearted one is that on November 13th, 1965, British theater critic Kenneth Tynan says fuck during a discussion on BBC. And it was the first time on British television the corporation had to issue a public apology. So restrictions on what you can believe, what you can say. In 1966, the Miranda rights come into being after the Supreme Court overturns the conviction on June 13th of a confessed rapist. And in 1967, Loving versus Virginia was a case in which the court held that the 14th Amendment prohibits governments from discriminating against individuals on the basis of race. So boundaries around the interconnectedness of people, definitely very much a topic during this time. And I think that for this time, Saturn's in Pisces, yes, I think race will be something that's talked about because in the US, that's all that's talked about. But I think also during this time, it'll be around gender and sexual orientation, particularly because Saturn in Pisces often brings in themes of bodily autonomy. I think that there will be serious legislation and definite discussions legally around gender, transgenderism, things around that, kids' age, etc., and abortion. I think that will definitely be something that is further discussed and fought over because restrictions, Saturn, Pisces, body, spread, autonomy things. And on the challenging side, I do expect that the terrorism will be religious in nature that we see. I know that this is a huge thing to say, and I'm not saying there'll be an increase in terrorism or anything like that, but that we will see it leaning towards the religious variety based on what's happened in the past instances. I think that religion will be hugely critiqued. I think that the belief systems that will largely be criticized are the right criticizing more progressive gender and sexual belief systems, and the left criticizing a lot of Christian belief systems that are associated with alt-right groups. I am not saying that Christianity is associated, whatever. It depends both sides. There's so many, but I think that will be a lot of what the belief systems that are kind of discussed, because those are the things I hear rising up that most fit this context. And on a less serious note, there will be an increase in critique of celebrities and entertainment and what is allowed. Retouching, editing, things like that will be highly scrutinized, as well as wanting less fakeness, which we can already see, but I think there will be much more of a movement towards you cannot edit and not disclose, or there will be more restrictions on illusion and entertainment and more scrutiny of who we look up to. So specific important dates. March 7th, 2023, it will enter Pisces. March until middle of May, Saturn will sextile Jupiter when Jupiter is in Taurus. This is lovely for solid opportunity of positive developments. June 17th, 2023, Saturn will station retrograde. And until November, this shows more of a rethinking or a reaction. to what has been built March until May. So expect a response or a rethinking of the Saturn and Pisces events that take place March until the middle of May. 2024 will have Saturn squaring Jupiter in Gemini for about half the year. So the second half of 2024, this looks like a tug of war between more polarizing progress and restriction. And then in 2025, the year starts with the North Node, Saturn and Neptune all in Pisces. And this looks like the ingraining of legislature or law around the rights and restrictions for bodily decision-making and also entertainment influencer-related events, like a serious amplification of boundaries. And Saturn and Neptune will never exactly conjoin in Pisces. They conjoin later in Aries. But 2025 looks like a big legitimacy kind of year around the ideals that began in this transit. So I'm going to run through the rising signs for where to expect this in your chart based on your rising sign. If you're a Pisces rising, you will be experiencing boundaries and maturity around your sense of self, your physical body, the way that you maintain it. Sometimes this can be a weight loss transit or a getting smaller transit because Saturn tends to show like the limitations of things. Or this can simply be a lot of responsibility on your shoulders and feeling like you're maturing. If you're an Aries rising, this is in your 12th house of mental health or spirituality. You might be getting really serious around a belief system or taking your mental health really seriously with cutting down on addictions or outlets, coping, etc. If you're a Taurus rising, this is in your 11th house of networking, friends, and social groups, so you might be more of a hermit and more selective on who you associate with. If you're a Gemini rising, this will be happening in your 10th house of career, so you may face challenges or limitations or just more responsibility around your professional life. If you're a Cancer rising, this will be in your 9th house of foreign travel or higher education, so you may be having to take more responsibility on either in your degree or having issues around immigration and long distance travel. If you're a Leo rising, this will be in your 8th house of investments and shared finances, so you may be having to be more conservative around your investing and spending, or deal with some loans or tax issues. If you are a Virgo rising, this is in your 7th house of committed relationships. So this could either be a time of committing to, on a very serious legal level, things like marriage or things like a partnership in companies. It can also show that you're taking a step back from relationships and having a blockage there during this time. If you're a Libra rising, this will be in your 6th house of physical health and coworkers. So you may be having to take on more of a management position and manage more coworkers, or get on top of your physical health issues. If you're a Scorpio rising, this will be in your 5th house of dating or creativity. So you may be having to take on more creative responsibility or be more mature and cut some people out with dating. If you're a Sagittarius rising, this will be in your 4th house of family and home. So you may be having to deal with family challenges, get really serious and draw boundaries, or think about like buying and maintaining a home. If you're a Capricorn rising, this will be in your 3rd house of communication and day-to-day writing and routine. So you may be having to limit or be more selective around what you allow into your routine or take on more maturity with how you're using your time on social media. If you are an Aquarius rising, this is happening in your 2nd house of income and money. So just direct day-to-day spending and earning money, you might have to be more careful around making sure there's enough money coming in versus what you're putting out. In general, in the world and in that specific part of your chart, expect more limits and restrictions and consideration of the beliefs and interconnectedness of things. And in the world, I think that this will deal mostly with religion, sexual orientation, and with the illusions or glamorization of celebrities and entertainment. If you have any thoughts, either positive or negative, around what you're expecting for the Saturn and Pisces transit, feel free to let me know down below. It is not all bad, nor is it anything to fear. Saturn will always be moving through some sign. So I hope that this helps. Let me know down below, and I'll see you in the next one.
There is one